am so excited to have Sara here. Sara and I go a long way back to careers in banking. So when we were with a very large firm, and it's so funny because it's a blast from the past, Sara and I connected again on socials and started talking. And it was, I don't know, it's like a warm hug around you because it takes you back to that life, to that place and where there's so many great memories and a part and a chapter of a journey in our lives. And it's so interesting because Sarah's doing all these amazing things now within her business and what she's cultivated. And she is no longer in banking either in the finance world, like myself. So I'm so excited to bring this conversation together. And Sara, thank you so much for being on the show. And if you could just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tessa. It's great to be here. It's great to connect with a friendly face. And as you mentioned, yes, we our paths originally crossed in banking. I spent 25 years of my career in banking at a large institution, and then the last six of those were spent at a smaller community bank in Chicago. And I recently stepped away from that and took on a challenge of challenging myself really and saying,
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore. I've had a great 1.0. I've learned a
Mhm.
lot. I've made a lot of great relationships, but I want to do something different.
Mhm.
And for me, I just didn't know what that was because my career was banking. And so I decided to step into a moment of learning and educating myself, and I have now, yes, started something different. I am, on my own now. The work I put in is directly related to what I get out, and I'm loving the opportunity that I have now. So that's a little bit about me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so interesting there because I think everybody listening, including myself, can resonate with the sense that you're ready for something different.
Yep.
You know, when it's, yes, we've had that beautiful chapters of our lives up until that
Mhm.
point. And I think also there's a cultivation in the world as it is that we're almost forced to take a step back in the pandemic and everything that happened. And
Mhm.
mindfulness really came into play and really taking stock and inventory of, okay, what's the next 10, 20 years going to look like? And what am I going to be doing? And this beautiful hunger to want to learn, right? To want to continuously learn. And it's not that you've maxed out at that point. You know, I know within myself and my career, I could have continued to propel and go on to different things, but it was a shift that needed to
Mhm.
occur.
Yep.
And it was a shift fundamentally that I felt inside that I couldn't put a name on it yet, but I
Mhm.
knew I had to get curious and I had to start looking. So tell us a little bit about, what that journey looked like for you when you knew that you needed to shift and find
Yeah.
something and start learning. And where, like, what did you listen to and what were the things that you did to kind of figure out where that was going to take you?
Yeah. So the shift, I define it as shifting from your 1.0 to your
Mhm.
2.0. And that's what
Love.
I talk to my clients about too,
Yeah.
right? I had a great 1.0, but my 2.0, I want it to look different.
Right.
So that's the big shift that has to happen, right? People
Mhm.
have often been riding what I call is this corporate wave, right? Where
Right.
they've been getting promoted or their jobs have been expanded with
Mhm.
the thought that they're going to get promoted or somebody has moved into a new job and brought them along with them. I mean, that's
Right.
how people move through the corporate structure. And
Right.
I was on that wave for a long time and I said, I want to get off the wave. And a lot of people want to get off the wave. And so the first step is that mindset shift of what is my 2.0? The
Mhm.
second part then is really being open to new ideas, right? And so talking with people, expanding your network, expanding your reach, and really starting to learn about possibilities that you
Right.
didn't even know existed, right?
Right.
And so now what I love about my 2.0 is that not only have I found my 2.0, but I am helping people to
Right.
navigate that for themselves, right? So moving from 1.0 to 2.0, 1.0 is kind of your comfort zone, right?
Mhm. Right.
2.0 is growth, empowerment. And guess what's in the middle of those two things? Fear.
Right,
And the
exactly.
fear of the unknown, right? And so
Exactly.
as a coach, I get to live out my 2.0 every day by helping people move through that fear zone
Mm.
and really getting to what their 2.0 is.
I love that because you have to, we all, and so many people that I know in my network today or that I watch, expand in their career and online and everything, and it's wonderful. And I can sit back at that desk right now. I can remind myself what it felt like to show up for work, know exactly what I needed to do. I had the structure, I had the expectations. I was ready, and I was always ready to give 110%, and I knew I could do the job and I could do it well. Right?
Hmm.
So it was this beautiful level of comfort. And I don't want to say that that's a negative thing, that's a beautiful thing too. But when you start to shift, and I think we all come to a point in our lives where we're ready to make the shift from the 1.0 to the 2.0, where something's just not feeling the way that it used to, right?
Hmm.
Something's worn off. We've grown, we've expanded within ourselves and within our lives. And I'll talk to people and they'll be like, well, I have this idea, or I've thought about this and this and that. But then the reality is, you get to a certain point, and I'll say it, you get to a certain age where if I take this leap and I leave this role and this job security, who's going to hire me again if things don't work out? Right.
Right.
So that's where that fear starts to chatter in your mind. And you're like, well, wait. That's all fine and dandy, and people can go dream and do this and that. But I'm going to stay put right here because if I make that leap, you feel like it's all or nothing,
Yeah.
right? You feel like you have to go on, which you don't necessarily need to once you
Hmm.
say, yeah,
Oh, no. I mean, so there's a lot of fears, right? The
yeah,
fear of failure, but there's also the fear of financing, funding. Like,
right,
what if I step away from something and I can't afford my life?
right.
There's the fear of family and people supporting you. So,
Hmm.
so there are a lot of fears, and part of it is, being able to identify what those are and then
Right.
being able to work through those.
I
So,
love that.
yeah,
With listing
yeah.
it on a paper. I mean, I tell people all the time, I tell my kids, I'm like, if they're worried about
Hmm.
something, I'm like, let's write it down.
Hmm.
Let's write it down. And we say it out loud and we write it down. And I'll tell you what, to anybody who's listening, when you put that fear on paper, when you share it with somebody else, when you connect with Sarah and you're going through these fears, they don't seem so big
Right.
because our thinking mind, right, our ego, our mind, our self has this beautiful ability to spin this narrative where all of a sudden this thing, this little bit of worry became this huge elephant of fear in your mind, and you were spiraling on all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. That's a normal occurrence in life. But if we just start with just listing off the basic fear, sometimes we deflate it even by reading it out loud and being like, all right, well, that's not going to happen. Right.
100%, 100%.
So,
And I combat it too with a mantra I say all the time, which is I can do hard things, right? I didn't make
yes.
that up myself, but I heard it.
Right.
And, I can do hard things. Like,
Yes,
I
you
don't
can.
need to be afraid of the hard things. So I think that
No, we
people get stuck
can.
there too.
And then I always I get a little gritty and then I think about that whole expression of bull in a china shop because I'm like, go do it. Go do the one thing that you don't want to do right now. Send the email. Don't just
Yeah.
say you're going to send the email. Ask the question, ask for something. I'm in the midst
Yeah.
of releasing a book and I'm looking, you look for endorsements and people to connect with you. And there's some people that I'm just nervous about asking. And I'm like, why? What's the worst they can say? No, thank you, and great. Okay, I survived, right? The no's. When we will always survive the no's, and I almost feel like it's a practice of rejection.
Hmm.
I need more of that rejection especially in my business life because the rejection that means I'm putting myself out there, I'm leaning in, and I'm just getting better each time and I'm understanding more dynamics. So for anybody listening, don't be afraid of the rejection. That's the key to success, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
little failures that add up and make you successful. So perfect. So we list out the fears and we start to go through. Now, what if somebody says, I'm feeling uncomfortable? I'm hearing you. I love this expression 1.0 to 2.0. How
Hmm.
do I know that that thought that crosses my mind when I'm sitting at my desk is potentially my 2.0?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we do is we need to define the 2.0, right?
Mhm.
We need to give it life. And by giving it life, we need to think about the goals, needs, and expectations that I have for my life. They're very different
That.
today than they were 5 years ago, than they were 20 years ago. So
Right.
we need to define that. And we need to look at what are my income goals?
Mhm.
What are my lifestyle goals? What are my wealth and what are my equity goals?
Love
Because
that.
what those goals are puts you in a very different position to know what you need to do, right? And
Right.
so the first step is always helping people understand what is my vision for my
Mhm.
2.0. And so I take them through an exercise, help them to understand that. And then that becomes the filter that they can use
Mm,
to evaluate everything they're considering.
I
So,
love
for the
that.
example you just gave it, if you're sitting at your desk one day and an
Right.
idea flies into your head, you can pull up your vision and say, does this serve my vision?
I
Right.
love that.
And I
Mhm.
actually have several clients who have come back to me and said, I thought that vision was corny when you first sent it to me, but I can't tell you how many times I find myself pulling it out and
Mhm.
saying, "Does this align with my vision?" And
Mm.
so that's the very first step is you've gotta have a vision for your 2.0.
I love that in so many different ways because it's real.
Mhm,
It's tangible. It's to a lot of people listening who are in those corporate worlds, right? Who are in the finance. We're used to reliability. We're used to structure. We're
mhm,
numbers people, right? We know what's coming in. We know what's going out. We know what we have to get done. We're executives and we're just used to that. So to be able to overlay a little bit of that old world onto something that's not necessarily tangible yet,
mhm,
but
right.
could be, feels really good to us.
Mhm,
And it's checking the boxes of, okay, sometimes this feels whimsical and like I'm almost being childish in a sense, but it's not.
mhm,
If you can really put a dream or an idea or a passion or a purpose into the world, I mean, that's what we're meant to do.
right.
That's what we're meant to be here. And 1.0 was great.
Mhm,
1.0 was fantastic.
yeah,
Now let's get excited about what 2.0 looks like.
right.
And also to filter out and have these beautiful dreams. Keep the dreams coming in, keep the ideas coming in, and pull out what Sarah gives you and say, look, could this fit? And I do want to take a step there and expand a little bit on wants and needs,
Mhm,
right? Don't get caught up necessarily, and I'm sure you talk about this with a lot of clients, to what you're used to in the past, right?
right.
Because that might not necessarily be what you need in the future.
Mhm.
I know I tell my kids all the time, the more you have, the more you have to clean.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
right.
I'm like, let's declutter. And that's the more laundry I have to do. And that's the more
Yeah.
stuff we have to carry around. And every time we move, they're like, why do we have so much stuff? And I'm like, exactly. And
Mhm,
that's metaphorically, I'm trying to speak to everybody and say, do you need so much in your life? Is it quantity or is it just the quality
yeah.
of what you're cultivating in your life? And that could be your home,
Mhm,
the space that you live in. Is it the right space for you? Is it too small, too big? Do you need less, more? Is it cluttered, which can really drain your energy? What about the relationships, social life, all the other aspects of it? I think that's really a healthy place to start, to be like, okay, don't just lift and shift 1.0 lifestyle and environment to 2. Let's reevaluate what's working.
100%. And I give people permission to dream, right? Because
Yes.
again, you don't need the same things you needed. And your wants at some point are very can sometimes be more important than your needs. Now remember, I'm usually working with people who are mid to later career, right? So
Mhm.
they've experienced, they've achieved high levels. And
Right.
so they're like, okay, let me have some fun now.
Exactly. Let's go have fun.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Let's cultivate fun and let's
yeah,
start dreaming up those wants and needs
yeah.
based on 2.0 that cultivate that. I want to be able to lock my door and go.
Yeah.
and be like, have somebody, friends invite us out for the weekend, or we just went on skiing this past weekend because
Mhm.
the weather is great. And I was like, lock the door, let's go. Less
Mhm.
is more. And it's also, it's funny because people lose sight. We go through earlier years as children and teenagers, and then we get really serious
Yeah.
for some reason, like
Really serious.
really serious.
Yeah.
And I love that you said fun because I almost obnoxiously in my relationships and with friendships, with life, I'm like, why can't we just have
Yeah.
fun? Let's
Yeah.
just loosen up a little bit. And my daughter, we were skiing this past weekend, funny anecdote, and I went over on the side and I jumped this little jump and I went
Oh,
down and I stopped next to her. I know, right? I was like, I was surprised myself. I was like, oh, okay, feeling good. And I skied up next to her and she was like, sometimes you're just like a kid, mom. And I was like, I'm going to take that as such a beautiful
nailed it.
compliment, right? So
Mhm.
I love that
Yeah.
cultivation of fun for 2.0, especially if you are that point in your life where you've reached a
Right.
lot of these dreams and you've enjoyed them. And also, it could be a dynamic at home too. The kids are older,
Mhm.
or you're waiting to experience some things, or maybe you're on your own now, or whatever it could be. What does that look like for you? And take that into consideration.
100%. Yeah.
I
And you
love
should.
that.
You've earned it. That's what
You've
I always tell
earned
people. You've
it.
earned it.
Why is it so hard? It's so hard for people that we have to tell them that they've earned it. You,
Well, I
it's.
mean, especially people who've grown up in a corporate structure, there's a lot of earning you're doing to
Yes.
to earn that next step. And even I mentioned it before, a lot of movement happens because your job gets bigger and there's
Hmm.
this carrot of you're going to get a promotion and you're going to get paid more. And that can sometimes take like a year to happen.
Right.
And so there's this real conditioning of like a corporate structure. You do have to earn everything you get in that.
Right.
And so you've earned it is what I tell
Yeah,
people. Like,
love
come
it.
on.
I love it. For everybody listening, you have earned it.
You have earned
You've
it.
earned this life. You've earned this dream. You've done the work. You are enough. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And you should be really proud of yourself. And just the fact that you're sitting here listening to this and thinking about this, get excited.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Get excited about it and expand into the idea that you are authentically going to be able to live this 2.0.
Mhm.
With Sarah's help, right? We're all
Totally.
going to we're going to use that and we're going to get there. And it's funny because we have these, we'll imagine and we'll dream what it could be and then we're like, "Oh, no, that's just silly." And I'm going to go on. But don't hold on to that.
Yeah.
And I dare you to really look into it, to
Yeah.
put the process over it, see if it could be something, and if it can, fine. And remember, that doesn't mean that you're just going to go give your 2 weeks notice right
Mhm.
now, right? I'm sure
Oh,
that's part
yeah.
of the
No.
conversation. Baby
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I often say I coach to a point of clarity.
Love
So
that.
I am really helping hold people accountable. So
Right.
I'm like your accountability partner.
Love that.
And once we define your vision, I'm helping you on this journey to learn as much as you need to learn until
Hmm.
you reach a point of clarity and you know what your next step should be. That
Hmm.
is what I do and what I love about what I do.
Right. And I love that because I love the accountability
Mhm.
aspect.
Mhm.
We try and hold ourselves accountable, but I will tell everybody we're almost our worst critic, right? So we're going
Right.
to be really hard on ourselves. Our expectations for ourselves are usually going to be higher.
Mhm.
And it can be a little difficult with that self-talk. So having somebody objectively who works towards this is really healthy because it
Mhm.
sifts out a lot of maybe the past habits of
Mhm.
talking yourself away from those dreams and just staying with status quo. Because we could do that. We could coast on, and 1.0 could take you all the way to the end of this journey. But now
Mhm.
that you've heard this, you're curious about 2.0 and you can't
Yeah.
stop thinking about it. So I dare you to start thinking about it now. Now, I want to shift just a little bit because so far we've been talking about what it feels like. Everything's fine. You're sitting at your desk. You might be a little bit uncomfortable and you're just thinking about next steps. Now, with the state of the nation being what it is, and a
Yeah.
lot of people very fearful already,
Mhm.
right? So they don't know what's going to happen. It could be an instance where jobs are being eliminated, jobs are changing, they're getting called
Mhm.
back to office, from remote work, and they've been on a schedule for 2 or 3 years, and they're feeling all of this anxiety.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to those people? Is now a good time to start thinking, or how do
Yeah.
you address that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a lot of people who are finding themselves a victim of
Yeah.
downsizing, can't find the next position that pays them what they want or meets their
Right.
needs the way they want it. I think it's always good to start a journey of discovery while you are not needing to make
Mm,
a move.
yes.
So I do encourage people, if you even have a thought of making a change, start learning and start that process now because it
Right.
takes everybody's on their own timeline and it
Right.
takes time. So, with all the volatility in our workforce and our workplace right
Mhm.
now, people are just scared, right? They
Yes.
don't know what to expect. And so,
Right.
yes, now is a time to lean into learning those things and lean into your U 2.0.
Right. I love that so much. And I would just say, it's with grace and with honor to say that this is going on and people are feeling this way. And it is just the environment of what we live in. And I love that idea of starting to expand thought, right? So if you're in the role now, you don't necessarily have to start looking, but what does it hurt to start leaning into that 2.0? And maybe it's not just looking for that same role somewhere else. Maybe it's getting creative and thinking about, well, what is it that I would really enjoy doing? And maybe the pay's not as much, but maybe you don't need as much at that time too.
Exactly.
So maybe it's a little bit of a shift in mindset there. And I'd also say, just to those listening that are in that situation where it is quite scary and unsettling, I would say we could shift slightly and I don't want to say that you totally have to embrace this and say, yeah, this is my opportunity and not be scared. But while you're also feeling the feelings that you're feeling, maybe we start to look at it as an opportunity to get to that 2.0 and just start to think about it and to start to look what life could look like if there was a shift,
Yeah.
right? So I know sometimes it can be really hard, and the feeling of scarcity and lack and fear and uncertainty can drive you into a mindset of, negativity and I can't and it's not going to happen and this and that. But if we take a couple deep breaths and we step into the gap in between those thoughts, right? Because every thought has a beginning and an end.
Mhm.
You can really see that you are okay, right? You're going to be okay. And there's opportunities here, right? And the ability to have the time, space, or even that kind of kick in the direction of having to start looking at this could be a really good thing.
Mhm.
So I'll just put it out there, hopefully to give hope and shed a different perspective on the world that we live in today. So
I
I
love
love
that.
that. Yeah, it just feels good, right? It feels good.
Well, and the other thing is it's empowering. I think that
Yes.
the state we're in right now, so they're calling the employee experience this year. Remember, we had the great resignation
Mm-hmm.
and we had
Right.
the great regret. This year is all about the great detachment. So employee engagement is at an all-time low, which means people aren't happy and thriving at work, which means productivity is probably dipping, which means it's a great opportunity if you're one of those people to lean into why you're feeling that way. And
Right.
is there a way to empower yourself to get into a better position? So just know that it's been called. This is going to be the year of the great detachment. So you are not alone in
Right.
these feelings, and sort of learning and exploring other opportunities will help.
That feels good. It feels good to put a name to it. So
Hmm.
people can say, I'm not alone. I'm connected in this and know that you aren't.
Yeah.
As Sarah just said, I mean, that's what it's being called right now. So you're never alone in this. And a lot
Mhm.
of people are feeling the same way. And again, shifting and using that as an opportunity to start to look to see what could be next.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great perspective and it does give you the hope and kind of lifts you up. And like you said, empowers you to start seeing. So perfect. So what's the next step as soon as you start to, design and look into that 2.0 and you're thinking about how you could cultivate this and this looks in your new world, what are
Yep.
you doing next?
Well, so once you have your vision, you have to know all the different pathways to get there,
Yeah.
right? So I call them vehicles of success. People are very used to the corporate structure. So again, the corporate job search says if I'm a analyst now, I need to be a senior analyst tomorrow, or a director now, I need to be an executive director tomorrow. This process of looking at all of the vehicles helps people understand what are different pathways I can take. And I'll tell you, there is a heavy focus on creating more self sufficiency. So, being
Mm.
a more self sufficient person, being
Mhm.
more self sufficient in how you make your money, how you spend your time. There's a heavy focus on that, which people, again, at mid, late career are really interested in those ideas.
I like that a lot, that self-sufficiency and
Mhm.
just and it's interesting because I still think about, the year of the detached employee and I think about the hiring process, which I'm sure has shifted enormously, right? For people getting hired in the roles and you work through that as well. And also to look at the different vehicles to connect. I think when you think about people who have been in roles for over 10, 15, 20 years, it's been a long time since
Yeah.
you've had to go out, depending on what role you're in. Sure, you personable, you had connections, built rapport with clients, but if you're totally trying to shift and now get into the social media aspects and
Mhm.
all of this AI and getting out there, I mean, that's going to be really intimidating.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it
It's a
is. And I
lot.
can imagine that fear, while you have addressed and written out fears at an early stage, I know very well that it stays right there.
Oh, yeah, it
It's
doesn't go
coming
far.
along for the ride. It's coming along. It's not like, okay, bye, thank you. We've addressed that. Now I'm
Yep.
going to be this fearless, courageous warrior as I go on this path and, you know, hair blowing in the wind and no fear to stop me versus what it actually looks like. And I can tell you on the line, being an entrepreneur, it's not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
I mean, it's the corporate world looked like a walk in the park compared to some of the stuff that I would rather be in that boardroom,
Yeah, right.
right? Or one of my pitches as a treasury management officer when I
Yeah.
have five other people there, which I used to scared me then, but now I'm like, whew, this will keep you up at night sometimes. So let's talk about that a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think I want to set the right expectations for those listening. We're not going to be able to totally release all fears and they never bother you again, but it's the acceptance of them and to be able to lean into this and do this afraid.
Yeah. Well, it's all about education and discovery, right? It
Yes.
is. So all of the work that I do is rooted in educating people on something they don't know about, right? And
Right.
so we use a lot of different tools, a lot of different ways. But once you educate yourself and you learn about something,
Right.
the fear can start to dissipate way more
Yes.
than you would expect because you take this thing that you've got out there. And I often tell people, like, you romanticize something, right?
Right.
And then when you
Right.
start to learn about it, you're like, oh, that wasn't going to be that hard, or that wasn't that risky, or why was I so afraid of that?
Right.
And so it is just leaning into that, educating yourself. And that's how I approach all my work. It's a
I love that.
possibilities based in education and discovery. And it's,
Hmm.
if you want those things, then let's work together because you'll learn a lot.
I I love that so much because of our backgrounds where there nothing felt better to me to be a SME, a subject matter
Mhm. Right,
expert.
right.
People came to me, I knew it. I was like, come on, and you loved it. People are like, just go to Tessa,
Yeah,
go to her desk. She knows. You and
right.
I worked together at different stuff. We knew how we operated. And man, nothing feels better. I mean, sometimes the kids come to me and I'm like, I have the answer to that. And I will
Yeah.
tell you. And you feel like there's a shiny light and you're like, ah. But it's
100%.
what you've almost given us is the ability to go into this
Yes.
new adventure, right? Scared, but with I like to call it a little bit of qualification
Mhm.
because we've
Mhm.
learned. So then you've eliminated that huge risk that we have blown up in our minds.
Right.
So we're going in there educated with an idea before we just hit the thrusters and we're full throttle and we're out there and we're like, whoa, I didn't actually know what I was going to be
Mhm.
doing. So it's like putting on the training wheels first and going out there with some really core key knowledge
Yep.
to really help propel some of that success,
Mhm.
right?
And on your own timeline.
On your own timeline.
So
Yep.
that's very empowering as well. You're working on your own timeline. I'm not rushing you. You're doing it on your own time. And everybody's
Mhm.
timeline is different because some people are working, some people are not. And so I think that's can be really helpful because if you need to take it slower, great, take it slower, gather
Yeah.
more information.
I love that. And I think it's also holding yourself accountable. You're
Mhm.
holding them accountable. So if you're showing up to that next meeting, you're like, great, well, how did that work out? And you're like, "Yeah, I didn't get to it." It's like,
Right.
okay. But it's your dream. So at the end of the day, right, it's you propelling yourself forward. And there are a couple of things there, that were said. And I think there's something to be said about challenge yourself for yourself, right?
Mhm.
Keep the promises that you make to yourself. Lean a little bit into the unknown because I read this beautiful quote, and it's not the unknown that we fear because we don't know it. It's
Right.
our past experiences that we fear that we don't want to repeat. So we go
Mhm.
ahead and just push that out and project that onto the unknown that we assume it's going to be some of those past experiences that we don't want to deal with. But it's not. It's completely a blank slate,
Yeah.
right? It's all there for you, a beautiful canvas that you can paint and tell the story on. So it's great.
Well, and it does sound very like, no, this doesn't
Yeah.
exist, right? But
Right.
it again, it does exist because all it has to be is you sitting with yourself, thinking about what you want your life to look like, and then going out and learning about it, right? So it can exist.
It can, and I have a friend of mine who's told me this idea, and I love it because he's shared ideas and different ideas, and he's put some of them into fruition. And he'll say it, and I'll be like, "What a great idea!" He's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, yes, go do it." And we all need that person who's like, "No, go do it."
Yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
ask. So I asked about it. I asked about it again just a little bit ago. I was like, "How's that going?" He's like, "Oh no, I'm really tired." I'm like, go do it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, so that's what you do for people, right? You're holding them again accountable to it. So we are following these dreams because otherwise, we all know listening on the phone, this all sounds great. You're going to get off the podcast. You're going to be like, yeah, and all revved up and energetic. And then you're going to go back to work and be like,
Yeah.
okay,
Here we are.
yeah, here we are. But I want you to write down somewhere where you're going to see it. Back in the day, I had sticky notes at my desk, whatever, put it on your computer now. A big sticky note electronically right on your home screen. And I want you to write 2.0 question mark.
Mm.
Leave it there. Just leave it there. And see what comes up. And I want you to look at that the next couple of days. And I challenge you in a week to start coming up with some ideas and take it at your own pace and start to have fun with this,
Mhm.
right? Start to design what that looks like. Become the architect of your life. Take agency over your life because that's what it's your turn to do. And you've earned it. You have, absolutely. And you can very much do this. And when those thoughts kick into high gear, this is silly, I can't do it. I want you to breathe into the space in between each one and reintroduce, I can. Fully capable of doing this. Fully
Mhm.
capable. And then just see what happens. And if anything, I almost feel like in some instances, it could supercharge your 1.0,
Oh, for
right?
sure. Oh, yeah.
In some cases, that could be the outcome of this, that it's a total metamorphosis of your 1.0 and it breathes all this vitality and life into it. And it's you who are going into the 2.0. It might not even be the job, but it's through this experience, you're gaining so much that your life it starts to change around you for the best possible reasons.
Yes, that is definitely an outcome that's positive.
Right. And then
Yeah.
you're showing other people too, because you're embodying these change, which is so profoundly powerful. You know, right? It's you start and they're like, what did you do? I thought you were at, blah, blah, blah company X. And they're like, no, I went and now I'm seeing you doing this. And look at you. You're
Yeah.
kind of radiating this new glow of life and you've re-embraced it in a different way and it feels so good. So I'm throwing all this out there for those listening to really kind of get you on the hook to want to try this because you're never going to regret it, right? The hardest work we can do is on ourselves, but it's the most rewarding and it's the work we never regret.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I guess for everybody else, who's listening, as they're going through this experience and doubt still creeps in, or they get on that second meeting with you,
Hmm.
right? And you see that the energy is kind of, waned a little bit. And what's that conversation look like?
Yeah. It just goes back to your vision, right? Like, and it constantly goes back to asking questions, and is your
Hmm.
thinking aligned with your vision? Because sometimes you can't ask those questions of yourself. So,
Yeah.
but again, it's, everybody reaches their point of clarity at a different moment. And
Right.
so it could be in that second meeting where you've
Yeah.
reached a point where you understand what you need to do, and that just
Right.
might be it.
Yeah, you
Um,
understood the assignment
mhm,
and now
mhm.
you're ready
Yep,
for it. Or
yep,
maybe it was something that tipped you over, right?
yep.
Maybe it was the news that you wake up and watch on your phone where instead of having that moment of just anxiety and stress, which we've all had it, we know it just seems to be the nature right now and you're slowly starting to detach, right? You're
Mhm.
becoming numb to it that you step into the gap and you're like, nah, nope, 2.0, 2.0 right here. I've got a dream that I need to design.
Yep.
I love
Mhm.
that.
I do
This is
too.
so great. I'm so pleased that you could come on. So, everybody who's listening, it's time to get our 2.0. Put the 2.0 on the computer, start to think about it. And for those that want to get in touch with you and know that they are ready right now and this is what they needed to hear today, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you can email me, and I don't know if you'll provide that, but my,
Yes, I will.
yeah,
Provide
so
now everybody listening, don't stop driving or whatever you're doing, and we'll
yeah,
be in the show notes. But
so we'll provide the email as well as a link to my website, or you can Google me, Sara Flanagan Coach, and there's tons of information out there as well as how to schedule a meeting with me. So that's just the
perfect.
easiest way. Just
Oh,
get in touch
I
with
love
me.
it. Yay! It's so exciting, guys. I'm so excited for this. This is everything I hoped for. I'm excited that you have this information. So let's go ahead and start our 2.0. All of Sarah's contact information will be added to the show notes, so you'll be able to see it. If you have any questions, reach out to her, and we want to hear about your 2.0, so share that. If you're in the midst of it, if you've had success with it, if you have questions for Sarah, please do not hesitate to reach out. And Sarah, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Tessa. It was wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.